Hello class, today we will start with a new chapter on chapter 7, and the first section will be on chromosomes and phenotype. The key concept for this lesson: the chromosomes on which genes are located can affect the expression of traits. The objectives for this lesson: first, we will relate dominant recessive patterns of inheritance in autosomal chromosomes to genetic disorder. So for this video, I will just discuss on the genetic disorder on autosomal chromosomes. And the next lesson, we will discuss about the sex-linked traits, okay? So 2 copies of each autosomal gene affect phenotype. Mendel studied autosomal gene traits like hair texture. And if you know that humans have 23 pairs of chromosome, and a picture of a chromosome, you call it karyotype. This is one example of karyotype. And if you look at this picture, karyotype is a picture of person's chromosome, and the 1 to 22 chromosome, you call it autosomes. This is your body chromosomes, okay? And the 23rd chromosome is your sex chromosome. So the autosome is a non-sex chromosome, so they don't influence gender. Now, many disorders are autosomal disorders because the afflicted gene can be found on the autosome chromosome. So many of the disorders in human are found in the autosomes. This 1 to 22 are the autosomes. Remember that, autosomes 1 to 22. And the 23rd is your sex chromosome. Okay, these are some examples of a disorder from your autosomes, from the autosomes. One example is cystic fibrosis, which can be found in chromosome number 7, Huntington's disease on chromosome number 4, sickle cell disease, chromosome number 11. So these 3 are just example of autosomal disorder. And there is also an example of a sex chromosome disorder, which we call hemophilia. We will discuss this in the next lesson. Okay, let's try to have some idea about the other disorders, like the sickle cell. The sickle cell disease is like this one, like a sickle. The normal red blood cell, the shape of a normal red blood cell is this one. And the sickle cell shaped like a banana, like this one. What happens if you have that disease is this one, the sickle cell will tend to block the blood flow in your arteries, veins, capillaries. So this one is a kind of a disease in the autosomal recessive disorder. This is a recessive disorder, okay, in the autosomes. Now, another recessive disorder, example of a recessive disorder is cystic fibrosis. Cystic fibrosis is a kind of disease wherein the body produces thick and sticky mucus that can clog the lungs and obstruct the pancreas. Cystic fibrosis can be life-threatening, and people with the condition tend to have a shorter than normal lifespan. So this one, look at this. This one has a cystic fibrosis, and this one is a normal, healthy airway, okay? So if you watch the movie Five Feet Apart, that is a story wherein they have cystic fibrosis, and they were in the hospital for some clinical testing, It's a love story. So if you haven't watched that, try to look for that movie because it's about cystic fibrosis. 5 feet apart, meaning they have to have a distance of 6 feet, like what we're doing right now during COVID. During this pandemic, we need to have social distancing of 6 feet. But that movie is 5 feet because they disobeyed the 5 feet rule, okay, for cystic fibrosis patients. Okay, now, autosomal recessive. When you say recessive disorder, when you say recessive, remember the recessive should have the two alleles, right? They should inherit the two alleles to have the disorder. Healthy is the dominant. The dominant allele is healthy, and the recessive allele, that one has the disorder. If H is healthy, if this is the allele, for example, capital H is healthy and lowercase h has the disorder, so the alleles for healthy will be capital H, and heterozygous capital H and lowercase h. So this is healthy because we are talking about recessive disorder. And the one with the disorder will be lowercase h and lowercase h, okay, because it is recessive. Let's try this one. Father and mother are both heterozygous to the disorder cystic fibrosis. Cystic fibrosis is a recessive autosomal disorder, okay? So if they are heterozygous, meaning one capital H and one lowercase h for both, and if you do the Punnett square, you will see that this one is healthy, this one is also healthy, and this is also healthy. But the capital H and the small h, these two are carrier of the gene cystic fibrosis, meaning if both, like their parent, okay, they got married, these two, man and woman, they got married and they are both carrier, they have a 25% or the 1/4 chance or probability of having a child with a disorder, with cystic fibrosis, okay? So heterozygous parents, we know, H is healthy, I explained that. Okay, now we go to the autosomal dominant disorder. When you say dominant, it means that the dominant trait is the one with the disorder. One example of an autosomal dominant disorder is Huntington's disease. This is a condition that stops parts of the brain from working properly over time. It is passed on or inherited from a person's parents. It gets gradually worse over time and is usually fatal after a period of up to 20 years. Huntington's disease is a progressive brain disorder that causes uncontrolled movements, emotional problems, and loss of thinking ability. They say that if you have a moderate Huntington's disease, sometimes it will manifest when you're already adult, okay? Okay, let's try to do the Punnett square for Huntington's disease. It is a dominant, autosomal dominant disorder. Dominant, okay. Sufferers must inherit only one allele to have the disorder. Okay, the disorder is dominant and the healthy is recessive. So if you look at this Punnett square, if the parent are heterozygous for Huntington's disease, if the first one, the capital H, homozygous dominant, will have a severe case of Huntington's because the child inherited both the dominant trait from the parent. So it means that if it is severe, this child will experience early death and may not survive to reproduce, okay? Then, since it is dominant disorder. This one also has a disorder. If it has capital letter, it means it is dominant and it has the disorder. And this one is moderate case of Huntington, meaning they can be an adult, but then when they grow older, like usually 30 to 40 years old, they might experience the Huntington's disease. And the Huntington's disease, sad to say, has no cure, okay? And only 25% or 1/4 will have a healthy child if both parents have the disease, okay? Let's try. If one parent is heterozygous to Huntington's disease and another parent is recessive or no disorder, okay? If one parent doesn't have the Huntington's and one parent is heterozygous for the disease, you will have 50% or 1/2 probability that your child will have the Huntington's disease. And this is the moderate case, meaning they will grow into an adult, but then they will experience the symptoms of the brain disorder when they become adult, okay? And then this one, 50% will become healthy, okay? 50% with disorder, 50% healthy. Okay, Mendel's rule of inheritance applied to autosomal genetic disorder. A heterozygote for a recessive disorder is a carrier, okay? Disorders caused by dominant alleles are uncommon. If you look at this Punnett square, this is a heterozygous parent. Then if this is a homozygous dominant, this two heterozygous could be a carrier, okay, for recessive disorder, okay. This one is a recessive cystic fibrosis. This one will be affected, or this one will have the cystic fibrosis or the disorder. This one will be healthy, and these two will be healthy also, but they are carrier, meaning if they get married, there's a possibility that they will have a child that has a cystic fibrosis. Okay, so I'll end this one. So we'll discuss the sex-linked traits in the next lesson.